Good morning. Hello. Got it.
Okay, good morning to the US. Good day to Germany. Good evening to Asia. So,
Hey, Martin.
whom do we have? Yes. Jürgen Brügel is also here. Bruegel
Ja,
Labs is
Bruegel
Jürgen
Labs.
Brügel. Bruegel Labs is Jürgen and Michael Ostrowski. Yeah. So the Munich-Chicago connection.
It sounds
Hello, Martin.
dangerous.
Good morning, Martin.
Yes. Yes. Good evening. I'm in Asia. Yeah. We waited another 3 minutes or so. Um, Rich, you have recently posted a very interesting comparison of publications of Chinese, US, and one German organization. It was Scholar articles or something like that.
Yes.
I would love,
Yeah.
I would love to discuss this and continue. Because have you seen how interested people were in about the little few things that we two were bringing together from China with, and it's something that most people don't know, right? Still.
Yeah. I'm really surprised, stumbled across that little giants information and initiative. I was just really taken back um, and thought that not only should we talk about it here, but also just, you know, write some articles about it. And
Yeah.
hence those two missions that I did.
Yeah, I wanted to continue
So,
from there. Yeah. So I I just yeah, I wanted to continue from there. I forwarded these statistics to the president of the Technical University of Munich, which is the most prestigious one in Germany, and he said that he will come back and talk with us here on the 4x4 whenever I want.
was he familiar with that initiative?
Um, no, not really. He's very
Okay.
interested in that. And it's the president, right, of this. It's like if for the US, if the president of MIT would come back and say, hey, yeah, let's talk about this in your radio show.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll look forward to that conversation for sure.
Because he's also hosting our lecture series about innovation. So in the TUM Asia campus. So he's quite interested in all this. Yeah,
Very good.
yeah,
Very good.
yeah. Yeah, it's now 10 o'clock, right? So we can start. The others would come in after and after. So yeah, I would jump right in. Rich, could you please continuing what we have talked last week? Last week we talked about the Little Giant initiative and other scary things for the West, because it seems to me that the Chinese, uh, within very short time, something less than 10 years or 6 years, uh, built something that is trying to copy the hidden champions concept from the Mittelstand, the small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany. And the way they do it, I can see a Pareto principle is they they try to install this with 5 times more companies than Germany has in this league, and then find out the 20% who perform best, and those would have the world market. And that combined with strategic insights in what industries and what raw materials are needed, to me seems something that is difficult to beat. At least we have to get on our back legs, as we say in German. So, and after that, you came up, Rich, with this statistics about publications of scientific articles, and it was a list of 10 universities, and among those 10 universities are not universities, 9 universities plus one German research institute, the Max Planck Society. And it seems that the 8 Chinese ones have about 10 times more than the MIT or Harvard and the Max Planck Institute together.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So just a very quick recap, right, of the Little Giants initiative, and that is that China has a number of strategic industries that they've identified that we all are familiar with and have talked about here a number of times. One is automotive, battery technology, solar, so on and so forth. Semiconductor and medical devices, robotics, etc. So what what was interesting in my discovery to me was um, I was not aware of this sub-level type of initiative called Little Giants, and that refers to the government supporting small and medium-sized companies and targeting them for what I'm going to call hyper growth. And that hyper growth is basically propelling them at anywhere from 10 to 25% growth is my estimate. And with the expectation that that company is going to grow not only technologically, but also grow in market share and market dominance throughout the world in a very short period of time is the directive.
Yes.
And that would rival and mirror the activities that you see within the Mittelstand German champion types of hidden champion companies, albeit those companies have done it on a um, much more even type of basis, meaning that their growth was not spontaneous. Their growth was in a stepped fashion as they expanded throughout the world, and that was their mainline strategy, right? They would be successful in a external company or country to Germany, and build that next step up in another country, like say the U.S. or Singapore or some other, Australia or something. And then once they were successful there, they would launch another country initiative, right, within the company. So they did that over, a period of decades that you as, a German citizen know, and Roland and several others here. The the other aspect to the Little Champions is the, or excuse me, to the Little Giants is that it appears that they've mirrored that strategy that Germany has taken, and basically said, well, that's an interesting approach, but the key difference is that they are really pushing these companies to expand very quickly, right? And to do that not only with technology, but also to do that with products, services, so on and so forth. But that growth really would come as the result of really penetrating the market and using their traditional market approach and market penetration approach for the Chinese, for a company like BYD and other companies within China, meaning that they would be using price as a key lever in their strategy on market entry. And that's another dimension of this. And when you look at the underlying structure of that Little Giants initiative, it's really to build the technology just the manufacturing.
Rich, just for your audio is breaking up. I don't know whether it's only here on my side, but I hear you. Before I heard you well, that it was breaking up before. Then you had a good streak, and then now it's breaking up again.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm driving, and I'm in Kentucky, so it could be a little shaky
Yeah.
on the
What
audio.
but what a nice setup that we can do that. Imagine that 30 years ago would not have been possible.
I'm sorry, say that again.
30 years ago, what we do here would not have been possible at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, 10 years ago it wouldn't be possible, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
let alone 30. Um, so going back to the Chinese, strategy, from everything that I've gathered thus far indicates that, again, they're using price as a lever. They're using, basically the idea of supporting their own internal manufacturing to China. And that's the whole purpose of these companies growing and then using the excess external markets for growth, but also for, basically building volume within the technology that they um,
Okay, now
what
I
the
lost you
Chinese
for the past for the past 20 minutes. I lost you.
ah,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
For 20 seconds or so, I lost you.
yeah, it's going to be difficult because I'm not sure what the coverage is going to be like here for me to keep talking, but um, hopefully
Yeah.
other people
We,
can hear.
we will see. I mean, I can take up from there. But what surprised me most is the way that China is organizing and orchestrating this. Because I was in another, I believe I sent it to you outside, but maybe also mentioned it here, another public talk given in Singapore to the Singapore German Chamber of Commerce by a former vice president who was in charge for China for almost 30 years, and he lived in Beijing. And he just told us something that I always wanted to find out. How is China driving this growth from the Mittelstand level upwards? Because um, that cannot easily be planned. We all know that you need certain individuals with certain knowledge and some grit in order to go through all that difficult time, because setting up a company is not really something nice, and is more like eating glass. That's what I read somewhere as a comparison. And you cannot plan this from top down. And what I heard from this guy, and this is why I wanted to live in China for a year, just for verifying whether this is true. China has a very rich culture of founders. They are smart, fast, agile. They have a knowledge about how to use tools in order to get things done, stuff done. And these people tend to set up companies. And because China is such an easy place to do business with one unified language for more than 1 billion people and a very simple economic system with electronic payment in the latest in the most remote corner of China, these companies are set up and developed until they reach about the size of a few hundred, and only then would the socialist central governing body take over and create it. And these people, the founders, they really want to escape from that because they don't like losing their freedom and their autonomy. And so there is something ongoing, and you cannot keep people in locked up in China as it was possible 30 years ago. So that's a twist to it that I find it's interesting, because in a Western country, in a capitalist country, the 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 government wouldn't take over so easily a company, right? But somehow China is different in so far, and I have not yet found out how that works.
Well, I think part of how that works, and this is not from experience, unfortunately, this is just from anecdotal information from people I know and listening to them, is that the Chinese government has recognized that they needed to build you know capability, they needed to build capacity, they needed to build knowledge. And what better way to do that than to leverage the capitalist industries and the capitalist markets, and have those companies basically teach them, right? So, and that's where that concept of absorptive capacity comes in, is basically utilizing Apple as a key component to that. Basically Apple taught them technology, and that propelled them to a certain level. And as they grew in knowledge, the educational system in China, with them sending undergraduates and graduate and PhD level, students to the U.S. for education, and elsewhere, not just U.S., but elsewhere, in Germany and other, highly educated markets. And then having those students return, takes that knowledge base to the next level, right? And then their experience and bringing that knowledge home, and it just keeps feeding on itself and keeps building. So it's that's part of that. And then utilizing the economic system within China, where the government plays a key role in the support of companies, and basically directing companies to with certain mandates, right? They have an oversight that is not elsewhere in the world. It's very unique. And all those things have combined to push them into become a juggernaut within the world economic system. And I personally, I think this whole initiative of the little giants, for us, what does it mean? I mean, that's the question, right? And for me, what that means is that this is a huge threat, and I think it's an unrecognized threat by the Western world, that China has that type of initiative, because they're going to be coming after those small, medium-sized manufacturers, and basically leveraging and either acquiring that knowledge or acquiring it illegally, right, to bring back to China, theoretically, and then create product on their own to supplant the foreign products from their manufacturing system, and then take that same technology and take it back to the world market to compete with those companies that they either bought it from or licensed it, or in some cases
not licensed. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, they
yeah,
just yeah, sure. But yeah, but okay, but what I must say is not so easy, because developing a product in China for the Chinese market is one thing, and but then selling those products overseas to, I mean, outside of China to the general market is another thing, because it's not so easy. I see that on a daily basis when companies from Europe try to expand their markets to Southeast Asia, and then they think that the Southeast Asians would just buy the European products because they come from Europe. They don't. And the same applies to the Chinese products. And so,
yeah,
yes,
and all that makes sense, but you have to also remember something. If you take a look at business history and you look at what Japan did, this is another aspect as to this little giants, as well as the greater economic system of China. They looked at what Japan did with penetrating markets around the world, and that
yes,
was typically a price leadership kind of market entry strategy. And the second tier to that Japan strategy after price was product. And what I mean by that is that the product range within a firm, the product depth and width of the product range, of a company typically outpaced the domestic leading companies within whatever market they were going after. And
Can you name an
you,
example for that? Because
oh,
it's
sure,
interesting.
sure. Yeah, I can give you many examples. The first one is what Honda did. When Honda entered the U.S., they entered with a single motorbike, and then Yamaha and Suzuki, later entered the market right after Honda was successful. And what Honda and Suzuki, Yamaha did was they basically, when you looked at their price, at their product range, they took a look at that and said, we need a larger product portfolio. And they had developed and brought to market a huge range of motorcycles that would meet all these niche applications for riders, whether that be BMX motorcycles, whether that be motocross, whether that be street bike, so on and so forth, right?
Yes.
And they became dominant in the market. They knocked out everyone but a Harley, if you would, right? Because Harley had a unique situation, from a position in the market from a CC range of the engines and the engine sizes. And Honda at that time, never even, brought out anything that large in the motorcycle until, the Easy Glide, I think they called it, which was their, road bike that competed with the Harley. And then at a later date, when you look at other companies, you can go right down the list of Japanese companies, and whether that be in the automotive industry, they did the exact same thing. They entered with a very low cost, very, very singular product entry. And then they expanded in width and depth, not only, in the number and types of vehicles, that would be the width. The depth is the amount of variance within those individual products going in width.
Okay.
So, pretty soon they end up with, pickup trucks. They end up with SUVs. They end up with convertibles. They end up with, luxury cars, right, within their portfolio. And, China's taken that same approach with these little giants. And I don't, it's all in that sense related to the,
Yeah, sure.
but that's my suspicion is what we'll see from them under this initiative is product range, depth of and width of, and with the companies that entered, going back to an example, a company in Japan that's called SMC, and they happen to be in the pneumatic industry. And when they entered Germany, Festo was number one, clearly, and now SMC is number two, and some even say number one, but I don't believe that. But nevertheless, their product width and depth just exploded in the 80s and the 90s and thereafter. And basically they outstripped the product range of the leading company, which was Festo. And that put Festo at a real disadvantage because customers are saying, well, I can buy this, and not only is that unique, but it's at a lower price than what you're selling it to me at. So here comes the price piece, right? And they always used price as an entry strategy, and I'm sure that that's what China's going to do. It just makes too much sense for them not to, because they're already doing that in these other strategic industries. I mean, that's the reason they dominate solar, is because of that exact strategy, as I just mentioned.
Sure, but now
and now they're doing
the next step lies at hand, right? So what to do about this? Is a tariff the right solution?
Well, from an innovation standpoint, what it, for us, what it means is that these companies that are these German Mittelstand companies, they need to innovate. They need to,
Yes,
they need to develop product and bring product to market. And the companies that are, slow to market, they're going to be at a disadvantage eventually, and they're going to lose.
yes, of course. But the next problem, um, I mean, in Germany now more on a regular basis than during COVID-19. And what I can tell you is that the decline, just one figure comparison. I saw a comparison of the jobs in the automotive industry, means the car manufacturer plus the suppliers, and another figure. I wouldn't call them workers, but employees in the public sector, means the paid by tax money. And if you normalize the figures, starting with the year of 2020 or 2021, since then the numbers of employees in the car industry, the white car industry, has declined by 8%, while the number of employees in the public sector has increased by 8%. And that means nothing less than that the tax must go up somehow, or the costs that the government bills directly, because the incomes from these people must come from somewhere. You cannot borrow, issue government bonds in order to pay them on a long run. And that makes it very difficult for all smaller companies that somehow need to invest into the future by innovating. So I believe is a very difficult ground currently now Germany to yeah, to make things work from that level. The best who can talk about this is Jürgen Brügel, probably. Could you unmute your microphone and say what you think about that?
Yes, it's a wonderful trend. I would call it bureaucracy. Everybody who is a little bit has a little bit knowledge about Germany, I think we are the world champion by far of rules, regulations, and and stupid bureaucracy. And I was just looking it up, but I don't find it. I have in the back of my mind it was some French early French scientist, and he said that the bureaucracy by itself always expands and expands. So yes, I totally agree. I have seen the same chart, and I had to laugh. Okay.
But the problem is, if you were one of the serial innovators of BMW, right? Until maybe very recent. And what I when I interviewed you about that one, and what I remember is that you said that all the difficult R&D is outsourced to smaller companies outside of BMW by the people of today. They don't invent anymore in-house in BMW. I mean the real
Correct.
inventions. Yeah.
Correct.
So how about these small companies? If let's say the car industry would halve, what would those companies do? Would they innovate and do something else, or and if yes, is it easy for them, or
No,
is it more difficult? So please take maybe one or two or three examples of that you know closer. What have they done, or what are they doing, and what is the situation now for them as the market is shrinking, or no, not the market. The market is constant, but the production is shrinking because the export is shrinking.
So I start with the engineering and come later to innovation. So yes, engineering. is outsourced. Engineering means the OEM has a clear vision and says, I need a part that can do this, this, and this. And for direct start of production or later start of production, this is usually a proven technology. It's always very, very difficult and risky to do a do something new, like a first in something. And now I take the dramatic example of brake by wire. 2000, when was it? Yeah, 24. So just a year ago, BMW had Continental, this company Continental, this tier one supplier, said, okay, let's do brake by wire. Okay, Continental innovated it. Okay, it's not innovation at all. All airplanes and these things do this already for years, decades. So they came up with this brand new brake by wire, and dramatic, it failed. It failed, and BMW had a major recall. It Continental had a budget of I think 58 million euros, you know, for this risk budget, or I don't know how to call it, but the complete recall costed was 1.4 billion euros. Wow. Innovation.
Wow, that is a number, right? So it's
That
30
is the
times
number.
more than implementing it. Okay.
Yes. So, innovation. I- Innovation, you can't outsource innovation. You can say, "Oh, I want this and this," and normally you have a very clear demand vision, what you wanna do. It is extremely rare that BMW is doing this groundwork. So, but we have an own division. Own division. This is research, early research. This is located in Garching, just across the street of the university, and these people have the freedom to work together with selected little startups or with students or even with the university to do basic Basisentwicklung, basis
Okay.
development. Um, so you don't know what will happen, and out of them, if you look at the Neue Klasse, wonderful example. If you look at the Neue Klasse, um, it has a display at the bottom of the windshield from all the way left to all the way right. And this is in Schwarzdruck. Normally it's painted black on the edges, these windshields, and
Okay.
they reflect from the cockpit onto this windshield. So you have hands on the wheel and have a lot of information, and you do not have to dramatically refocus. So it's an unbelievable thing, and this came out of this research. Another thing. Um, what do we do if we will do more autonomous driving? So, autonomous driving means the person doesn't have to sit anymore in a certain position. So you might say, so what? Yeah, airbags. You better be there where the airbag can help you. And
Okay.
the other little thing what I was playing with, stereo. You are out of the sweet spot of your stereo system.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, what to do? Yeah, let's see what we can do. And yeah, you put your basically more or less a headset into the headrest. But how about the bass? So that it's a really good experience. And yeah, this became really difficult. But we also were able to place the subwoofer into the cushion, into the where you sit on. And
Okay.
then the challenge with you need like a hose to get the space close to your head so
Okay.
that you
But
hear this space.
please allow me one question.
Yes.
The innovation that you are addressing, to me that sounds a bit more like a incremental innovation and not what is needed in order to create new jobs in a new industry.
No, you are totally correct. You are totally
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
This is the dramatic problem what we have. Innovations, yeah. But there is nobody who really does innovation anymore. Now let's go back to innovation in the past. In the past, big companies like Bosch and other suppliers, also Continental, as we already mentioned them, had a budget for new things,
Okay.
uh, for innovation and so on. So, what did the tier one, no, the OEM do? They invited all these companies and made like a trade show. Show me what you have new. What innovations do you have?
Okay.
This worked for a while, but then suddenly the car companies, who was the guy? This was a Spaniard at Opel, Lopez. He was famous for squeezing the last drop of blood out of a supplier.
Yes.
So where do you save? Do you do cost savings? Guess what? Innovation.
Okay.
Yeah, and suddenly the innovation is drying out. So currently are a couple of companies, or more or less startups. Uh, BMW works with some startups on real innovation. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
But it would still be cars, right?
yeah, it still be cars. One example is there was an article about Volkswagen. This um, uh, na, this nachwachsend, regrowing material
Yeah. Yes.
like fennec or hanf, not wheat, sorry, but you know what I mean.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And so this comes, they have a very low CO2 footprint in production and um, uh, are lighter. And yeah, you can 100% recycle it. It's not plastic. anymore. It's grown grown
Okay.
plastic replacement. This is the kind of innovation what is being done, but it's an iteration. It is when I follow your logic, it's an iteration. The customer, the end customer, the car buyer.
You mean is incremental, is it? What
Yes,
you want to say?
yes,
Uh-huh.
this is what I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, but Rich, we are on the same page, right? What the Chinese little giants are doing is non-incremental, clearly to me. And
Yeah, and I give you also the Chinese do love to do this. They foster or they motivate as many companies as possible and let the best win. They have done it with the automotive or are still in this race. In China, this gentleman, he did not, also he was from the automotive business. He did not know whether they have like 100 or 160 car companies. And all of those are going for the race, for the best battery, for the best chemics, for the best charging, for the best. And it's very clear that only maybe five will survive. The rest, oh well. This is CCP's. They don't have the problem, the luxury, the European luxury of socialism.
uh-huh, I don't understand what that means, but
You don't understand.
no,
We have a responsibility for the people and that they are in jobs and so on. And the Chinese were brutal. Well, you have
yeah,
lost your
they
job.
also have a
Bad for you.
responsibility. That yeah, I went a bit deeper. There was this paper sent around. I believe even you have sent it around that BYD is not in good shape because they have a cash problem. Yes, they have a cash problem, but why is BYD having a cash problem? I found out BYD had let the suppliers play bank for them, so they didn't pay the
Yes.
suppliers for 9 months after supplying, and
Yes.
that was putting jobs in danger. So the centralized government came in and said, "Now you pay your suppliers," and they had a deadline to pay all suppliers and fulfill all and every outstanding invoice that they have. And of course, you have a cash problem if that happens in your company. I mean, if you
Mhm.
do that, that's very normal. So you cannot say that the Chinese government is not responsible for the people. I think so. They do, but they
It
do it
was over
in a
it, but our caring government is
uh-huh.
overdoing it. We have too many employees who can think of new
Yeah, of
rules and
course.
needs and
Yeah, but now let's go back where we came from, Rich. Where we came from, because why are we looking at all this? And so because we need to encourage the German companies, the Mittelstand, the small and medium-sized enterprises, now get some innovation and get more than incremental innovation. You need to do something non-incremental because otherwise you won't find your new S curve. And the new S curve is what you need in order to survive. Otherwise, you will die. Isn't it, Rich? This is where we come from. So now the question is how to put this in practice, into practice. And and
Yeah,
and
uh, you're, you're excellent
say again,
question.
Rich, say again. The whole last 40 seconds was broken up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So what I was saying is your question is spot on. It's basically how do we put it into practice? And I think a novel, excuse me, I think a novel way to put it into practice is to talk about the Little Giants initiative. And that presupposes the question after that discussion,
Well, what do we do about it? Well, you need innovation. And that's where we can help you.
Yes, exactly.
Hey,
And
Martin,
some
Michael
government.
here.
Yeah, go
Hello,
ahead.
Martin. Yeah, Rich and I, a couple weeks ago, took a closer look at two giant German companies. And even though they're not Mittelstand, what they've done is a good example of how to survive changes in a market. Those two companies are ZF and Bosch, okay? And what they did are each did something different. Bosch diversified into tools, into appliances, and into other things that are outside of tier one supply to car companies. Now, ZF, on the other hand, built their company on transmissions, but they diversified within automotive into electric power steering by acquiring TRW and into suspension. I think they acquired one or two shock companies, including Bilstein. So within automotive, there are countless diversification opportunities. And General Motors, for example, here in the U.S., had all these divisions, Fisher Body, and people made Dalco starters and spark plug wires and all that. And GM had Frigidaire. They got into air conditioning way back when they wanted to grow beyond what automotive and captive GM divisions were producing for GM cars. So I think for your German Mittelstand companies, the lessons of the German tier one giants can be fractionated into several pieces. One are those who are suffering, and I don't know enough of the big ones like Bayer and others beyond ZF and Bosch that Rich and I talked about. But Continental, I think of Continental as having timing belts and components for engines, and I don't know what they've done to diversify. But they probably compete with Bosch and braking systems and other components. But I think if you're trying to do some consulting for the
Michael,
German,
that's not the size of companies we are talking about.
no, but I think the lessons learned, Martin, I don't think the size matters. The lessons learned is the companies that are €500 million, unlike ZF that's 100 billion euros or more. I think the lessons learned are similar. They need to do other things in terms of diversification. And again, Bosch, you take power tools and appliances, all they have to do with automotive is that they're high engineering content, and they compete worldwide with Myobi and all these other Asian power tool companies. That's not easy for a German company with high labor rates and high-end engineering to stoop down into appliances
and you say
and power
size
tools.
matters, Michael, because a company with 100 billion revenue has very different ways to access the capital market as compared with a company that has 50 million revenue, or 15 million, which is already considered a big one in Germany. So as a Mittelstand. So,
for BMW to take a risk in electric power brakes, from what Jürgen said, that's a bold step, because you're putting people's lives on the line if electric brakes don't work. So I think it's interesting within automotive. Of course, ZF, they pioneered in automatic transmissions that had PWM valves and electronic controls, and they beat up Hydromatic and other companies
Michael,
in
I
Germany.
don't think that this can be compared. If you have a 100 or 50 billion revenue company, then you have very different ways to finance yourself.
Well, okay,
and also
Martin, a couple of months ago, I mentioned one that's 100 million euros called Schumag, and Schumag got into business machine parts because their business with Bosch was suffering. So there's one at the low end of Mittelstand. They're called Schumag. And
that's not the low end, that's the high end of Mittelstand, Michael.
Well, 100 million euros. I don't know what, I thought you were at 500 million for Mittelstand.
No,
but in any event,
the real size, the real guys. Let's ask Jürgen Brügel. Jürgen, the typical company that you, when you in your active time for BMW outsourced work to, what was the revenue of that company? How many employees did they have? And just give us a few, maybe an average. An average.
Just an example, Mittelstand who builds show cars. You know, there are companies they do, let's say, the complete electronics and so on and so forth. So this company um, has let me 30 employees,
Okay.
about employees.
30.
Yeah, 30. And
Okay.
I mean, they're making money, but not really, because not too much, because the car companies always are very, very strict in the hourly rates. So
Yeah.
it's again a very there's a very small
Okay,
margin.
and
Yeah.
you would say that is a typical outsourced company for the car industry.
Yes.
Okay, good. So 30 employees, that
Yes.
translates to a payroll with the social insurance and everything of something like 300,000, maybe 200, 300,000 euros per month. That's a payroll plus the social insurance plus whatever, something like 200,000 euros. I know because I had such a company. So.
Oh, okay.
And so from the 200,000 per month, that translates to 2.8, 200,000 times 12, 2.4 million per year. And then that's about 1/3 or 40% of the entire budget. So I would say the overall revenue of this company is 10 million, maybe
I
8,
call those
maybe
small,
12.
Sounds.
Martin. Forgive me, but I think those are small compared to what we've been talking about for years. Your
Yes,
Mittelstand,
sure.
I thought were a lot
That's
bigger.
why no, this is the typical German Mittelstand. This is where the little giant competitor starts. And you need to realize this. You cannot go for the big names and then say now the same, let's apply the same thing to the Mittelstand. And there are thousands of those companies, and BMW does all their show cars with them. Is not something unimportant like a laundry service for the overalls in the workshop, or I don't know, janitor service in one plant or so. But no, this is a real company that builds all the BMW show cars that are shown in motor shows around the world. Year in, year out, 10 million revenue. That's a typical Mittelstand company, as I know. And I am actually, Rich, you have shown me this book about the Mittelstand. So I looked through it, and I recognized one company because I worked in that company as a 25-year-old university student in a deployment. And of course, it's now 35 years ago. But this company is today a hidden champion, considered a hidden champion. And 35 years ago, they had a revenue of annual revenue of 10 million, and that was typical. And that's the ones that half of them will fall away because the German export in cars shrinks by 50% at least, if not 75. And that would mean that for over the next 5 years, the German car industry would shrink by 50%, which means one in two companies will, as Jürgen has mentioned, will fall away. And what to do for them? And then this 30 people, they have one boss and maybe a deputy, and that's it. So what do they do after that? And what they do currently is they try to enter the race for bidding for the lowest price, and that will be very sure won by the Chinese and not not by a German company.
Say,
So now
Martin,
what to
Martin,
do? Yes.
Martin, just for the record, I pulled up Wikipedia definition of Mittelstand, okay? They said annual revenue up to 50 million euros and a maximum of 500 people. So I mentioned Schumag was about 100 million. So, okay, they're too big. But 50 million euros is certainly bigger than your custom show car builder that Jürgen just talked about.
Okay.
So
A
that's the
company with
size.
50 million. Yep. Let's break it down. A company with 50 million revenue. If they are a service company like the show car builder, then they have more people. But if they are production, they're also 30 people.
Well, here it says
Because
500 people, and they call them SMEs, small to medium size. And
yes,
from
yes, yes.
your
But 500
discussion,
is the max. I would say the median is 30 people, 50. Yeah, that's the reality. And I've seen it and I know it because I'm from there. I've grown up in that such an environment. I studied in the environment. My clients come from that environment. What I say is what I see. It's not something that I invent. And the companies you are talking about, this has nothing to do with Mittelstand. This is more like they talk with the minister. If they have a problem, then the minister will show up. A state minister for, I don't know, Bavaria.
Well, take a look at
So if-
the Wikipedia, Martin. The Wikipedia says a lot of these started out as small, they became medium, they started out as family, then they become divisions of some other giant like Bosch. So even if they're a small division that's fairly autonomous at Bosch, Wikipedia calls them SMEs, not a division of Bosch.
that they would not listen to us. And this is definitely not the market. They wouldn't come
Well,
here.
here it says there's
Don't
250,000 companies in Germany, 45 different
yeah.
branches of trade, and automotive is only one of 45 market segments. There are
Yeah, the
people
second
that are
largest is chemical industry. Then the third largest is machining. I mean, machine making is still big. Like, yeah, where all the Festo valves are sold to, for example. So there
Well, pull up
is
the
production.
Wikipedia, Martin. The Wikipedia
No,
is very informative. Take a
yeah,
look.
sure, but that
Excuse
doesn't
me,
change the
don't
reality.
think Wikipedia takes a real life. I mean, the real life Mittelstand is really a small company with an overseeable. They know each other, everybody, and there is one boss and a little bit office and so on. And yes, they are champions in whatever this bearing. They are the only ones who can do exactly this bearing what the whole world needs. But this is what we as German feel the Mittelstand. If
Yeah,
Wikipedia has a different opinion, so what?
and so these few 100,000 companies. I mean, of course, if you take the very large few 100,000, that's all the companies that are organized under the chambers of commerce. But I would say that the Mittelstand is something like maybe 1/3 of them or so 80,000. And yes, there are over 45 industries, but 80% of those companies work in the three large industries that I told you. This is car. The second one is chemical, and the third one would be this production machine making.
Look at
As a very general.
all these bakeries, all these butcher shops,
Yeah,
all these small companies, and they're not in the millions. Oh no, but they're Mittelstand because they have
yeah.
a certain minimum amount of employees. And their revenue is maybe the revenue, but what they earn at the end of the day, it's really often very, very uh, minimalistic, very
Something
little.
like 5-digit euros as what's the profit for a bakery, let's say, yeah, per
Yes,
Well,
year.
Martin,
yes.
here it says Angela Merkel, the German government, took up Industry 4.0. And in addition to the three industries you just mentioned, this says that the Mittelstand firms are being caused to take up digitization and create smart
She's a stupid
manufacturing.
bitch.
Well, no
Yeah.
Sorry, my
comment.
French.
I don't know her as a neighbor, so no comment.
Ah, yeah, no, look, Michael, this is a top-down approach as you would have expected from China. Nobody in the Mittelstand would adopt Internet 4.0 just because the government says so. It must make sense
Well,
economically.
here it's the National Academy of Science and Engineering called Akatech in Germany. I don't know if you're familiar with Akatech. They created Industry 4.0 to try and get the Mittelstand companies some help on innovation.
So what?
And
Did it happen? Did it work? No. Hot air. If I may, if I may, I would like to give you the option. My personal point of view is the only way would be angel money, angel investment, to help the Mittelstand to analyze what they can do better, what new things they can create out of their own knowledge. And if you are interested, I have a good friend. He is normally in Silicon Valley, and he is an angel investor. He can give us
Yeah,
his point of view,
sure.
whether this would work or not.
Yeah, we nicely brought the discussion where it should be, Rich, if you have followed that. What is the target group? And a target group is not a 500 million revenue company. The target group is something like 40 to 100 million that would be willing to do so. And yes, they need money, but the question is, would the angel investor really uh, finance that? And if yes, then how? And how is it organized and how is it managed? Because you cannot just put some millions somewhere and tell people now innovate without having a business plan. I mean, there are
Let's ask
some
him.
people.
Let's ask him. He is confronted with many small companies. Most of them are
Okay,
startups.
yes,
And how are the decisions made? What are the criterias to invest? Do they have to have a well or totally developed product?
yeah,
What is how about the ideas? And yeah, what are the criterias for them to say, okay, I put my bet on you guys? And
okay,
certainly, if they lose, that means there is no innovation and so on so forth. Well, the angel investor, this is his business.
yeah. So let's
If
ask him. Can you bring him here?
hopefully he is currently with his mama in Italy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So let's see where he would show up, whether he would show up. This is definitely an interesting pitch. I
Yeah.
tell you. So if you have an investor here, because without money you do nothing in this area. That's for sure. And people
Yes.
always are longing for the white knight, but I don't buy it. I have a different approach. I believe in pre-sales, but yeah, let's see. So we are at the end of our hour. I thank you all very much. It was very insightful again, and I hope so also for the audience. And see you again next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Super. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take
Bye-bye,
care. Bye.
Martin.
Bye bye.